The independent special prosecutor will help families, survivors undertake the incredible work that they need to do in a respectful and culturally appropriate way while honoring the wish of survivors, community families, and members.
Canada has an essential role to play in ensuring that those resources are available and that all communities can find their lost children and comfort them and their families.
The federal government is calling today a critical step towards reconciliation. A special interlocutor has been appointed to lead the government's response to the unmarked graves identified at former residential school sites. Kimberly Murray is that appointee. She's also the former executive director of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Hi, Ms. Murray. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
I appreciate you making the time. Can you help our viewers understand what you will be doing in this role? Like, how would you describe it to them?
I would describe it in two ways. The first way would be that I'm to be a facilitator between survivors, leadership, the federal government, and other organizations and institutions that need to know how they can connect with people and places that can help them in the work that they're doing with unmarked burials and looking for the missing children.
And the second part of it?
And the second part is doing a review of the problems that we have in Canada with the legislation or the lack of legislation. So we don't have a federal legislation to protect these burial grounds at former Indian residential schools. We have legislations in every province and territory across Canada that perhaps aren't as strong as they should be, aren't being utilized in ways that they could be utilized. And so just really looking at those gaps in the legal landscape and how we might be able to improve them.
And what would be the end goal of any of those improvements to the legal framework?
Well, certainly protecting the grounds. You know, we can't have people coming and building swimming pools on top of burial grounds of First Nations children. How do we protect and preserve those and commemorate those cemeteries and burial grounds that we know exist across the country? How do we ensure that people aren't hiding where those burial grounds are? Are there laws that we can strengthen for access to records, for protection of records? How do we know records aren't being destroyed? How do we improve access to those records? We have all kinds of privacy legislation in place that doesn't allow people to access records that can be very helpful to survivors and communities to learn who these children were and where they're buried. So there's all kinds of legal problems, if you will, that we have to look at and see how we can improve.
Based on your kind of surveillance of the landscape as it exists right now, and certainly obviously you'll be studying it in the coming months in more depth, but based on your kind of initial impressions, is the gap between what is happening and what should happen a large gap at this point?
I would say yes. I would say there's a large gap. Some of the gap, though, isn't that the legislation might be there, but they're not being utilized. For example, there are provisions in some legislations that make it an offense for people to do anything on top of a burial, yet they're not being enforced. Charges aren't being laid. It'll be interesting to see in this work of our office to see, has there ever been a prosecution of someone that has interfered with the burial grounds of a former Indian residential school or near a residential school?
And so ultimately you'll make recommendations to the government. Has there been any communication to you or reassurance provided that those recommendations will be adopted, or is it kind of a we'll study them and then make a decision?
There has not been any assurances that they will be implemented right away. I believe Minister Lametti was asked that question this morning, and his response was it's hard to answer when we don't know what they are yet. And certainly I don't know what kind of recommendations I might make until I speak with survivors and communities and the leadership to see what they see are the answers to the problems that they're facing right now.
Ultimately, though, why is it important that not only do laws exist to guard these sites, but also that enforcement happens? Like, why is it important in our history that this happens, that the public is aware, that they are protected? Why is it important?
Well, I mean, I think from the very beginning, we want to make sure this never happens again. And it's really important, and we heard this morning from the elder when we were at the press conference, how important it is that the truth comes out, the full truth comes out. And he believes and said that more needs to be told, and we need to speak to the survivors. They're getting older. And there's a lot more information that needs to be shared with Canadians that they're not aware of.
There also have been calls for some sort of investigation to take place, whether through the ICC or within Canada itself. Do you see the possibility of that as still there, given your role? Like, I know your role will be different than that to a certain degree. Do you think both can exist in conjunction?
Absolutely, I think both can exist. And for sure, the Office of the Special Interlocutor, our office, will not interfere or impede, and will work alongside those other investigations that may be triggered. If a special rapporteur was to come to Canada, we would welcome the opportunity to meet with the special rapporteur. I know some communities are struggling with the decision whether to have police services come in and do an investigation. I personally have been working in the last year with the Mohawk Institute survivors, and we do have a police task force there. And there's some challenges with that. And so, you know, what are those challenges? What are those difficult decisions that communities and survivors have to make about bringing in those colonial policing services that played a role in apprehending the children and taking them to the institutions? So is there another way the policing can happen, the investigation can happen, and the prosecutions can happen, if there were prosecutions? I'm not the prosecutor. I'm not the special prosecutor.
Do you think there should be one, though?
I would like to hear from the community to see what they would like. You know, it's too early in my mandate to sort of make a decision around that, and I definitely want to hear from people about what they would like to see happen.
Understood. Okay, thanks, Ms. Murray. I appreciate you coming in today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.